Today I have Zach George with me, and you must be under the rock not to know who Zach George is. Uh, Zach George is a dog trainer who's been uh, obviously popular on YouTube, but he started on TV. We'll get to know Zach George a little bit more, and we'll talk about dogs and dog training. So thank you for being here, Zach. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Great, thank you very much. So, in the beginning, I want to kind of start learning a little bit about Zach. Okay, so let's pretend Zach is 12 years old or so. What's happening with Zach? Where is he? What is he doing? What inspired Zach to become a dog trainer?
Well, I've always loved dogs. I started off by doing competition dog frisbee stuff, about 20 years ago or so at this point. And that really ignited a passion in me that I didn't fully understand was there about dog behavior and communicating with dogs. I was just blown away about how intelligent dogs are and the amazing tasks they were capable of doing. And that was just really interesting to me. So that's how I entered being a dog trainer. These days, I have a passion for helping everyday people communicate with their dogs at home and build better relationships with them. We also have a lot of focus on advocacy for advocating against traditional dog training methods that unfortunately promote pain and fear in professional dog training. So we're very outspoken on that issue. And so I started, about 20 years ago, I started working with people. Once I discovered this passion for working with dogs, I decided that, working with the public would be necessary if I were going to pay my bills and I wanted to work with dogs, right? Just a issue of combining things that you're interested in doing so that you can do that.
So did you start working with dog owners one-on-one, and what did you find most rewarding about working with dog owners one-on-one?
Well, that's a good question. I think the rewarding part of working with everyday people with their dogs is just helping them find that connection, helping them work through issues, because I think most people it's pretty impossible to not love a dog, but that doesn't mean that you don't have issues in maintaining your sanity and things like that. So I find a lot of gratification in helping people connect with their dogs in modern ways, particularly in ways that require inside out thinking, if that makes sense. Motivating a dog to want to listen from the inside out. That is the light bulb moment I love seeing in people's eyes when they get that.
And how did your approach to dog training evolve, over the years?
Well, that's a good question too. So over the years, and I think this probably speaks to a lot of people who've been in this industry a couple of decades at this point, traditionally, when I entered the dog training scene, positive reinforcement was just gaining acceptance. This is the early 2000s. I mean, really, in terms of mainstream training, thanks to folks like Karen Pryor out there who really popularized positive training, and many others. And back then, my focus was very much on bringing about the behavior that we were trying to, whether that was sit or stay or come or stopping unwanted behaviors like barking or jumping, and being very focused on that. As time has gone on, I've come to learn and prioritize the welfare of the animal and the well-being of that animal even more than what it is we're trying to teach. And so I think this is a point that has really come about in recent years in dog training. It is where the cutting edge and the future is in our field, where we consider not only the task that we're trying to teach, but also how the dog is feeling. What is their emotional state during the training process?
Right. Yeah, I personally, I focus on that as well. I kind of focus on the whole thing. I start with the dog owner first. I start to kind of fix the dog owner before I fix the dog, because the dog owner is the path to the dog. And I feel like, in a way you have to be a dog psychologist and then dog trainer, dog psychologist in a way to fix the problem.
They ask so much of us, the public,
Right.
don't they? Because we're not
Yeah.
training the dogs, we're training them, and we're also
Yeah.
working with the dogs. I know we're underappreciated, Saro.
In a way, yes. So, what is the core principle that you believe is the fundamental of, let's say, dog training overall?
Building a bond with the dog.
Oh.
Building a bond is always number one. You know, when I in my books, I have 2 best-selling dog training books. That is the first thing I try to point people to. I understand people want to get control of their dogs. I understand they want to teach them how to do things, but by prioritizing the bond with the dog, that is like hitting a fast forward button on anything
Mm,
you could ever want.
mm,
That means everything. That's why we get dogs, isn't it?
yes.
Because they're easy to love.
Right. Right.
And yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, that's my core subject would be also to get the dog owner to bond with their dog. And side note, I find, for example, using play and praise that elevates the bond uh, development between dogs and dog owners. And you know that too, that how effective play is when we're talking about dog training. Can you explain the concept of positive reinforcement and why is it effective in dog training?
Well, the consensus in the behavior science community, ranging a broad range of species, is that positive reinforcement methods are not only as effective as any other method, but they don't carry welfare concerns, such as mistrust if you were using, say, punishment or increased aggression or a whole host of other side effects. So positive reinforcement training, I use it, number one, because it's the most natural way for me to train. Keeping things in a pleasant state is obviously creating a conducive environment to learning. And so the science is overwhelming that positive reinforcement is the most humane and effective way to teach dogs. And
Mhm.
so I owe that to the public to bring them that when I'm advising them. I owe them that, and not to, say, try to dismiss something because I have a personal feeling on it or whatever.
And what would you rate as positive reinforcement and not positive reinforcement? Can you kind of explain that part?
Well, yeah, I think you're probably hitting at the core of the conversations, certainly on social media in the dog training community,
Mm,
which is
mm,
there are 2 popular schools of thought when it comes to training dogs. You and I are focused on positive reinforcement training. We're focused on what the dog does right. And then there's a more traditional, outdated sect of the dog training community that has a heavy emphasis on heavy-handed corrections. Say, oftentimes they will implement tools like choke, prong, and shock collars.
mhm,
And they will use those in a way to motivate a dog to avoid pain, fear, and intimidation. And we think that represents a very old school, outdated way of thinking that is not in the best interest of the public moving forward based on scientific evidence. Yeah, positive reinforcement is where we add something desirable after a dog behaves the
mhm.
way that we want them to. And
Right.
punishment is where we add an unpleasant consequence to a behavior as to decrease that behavior. And so the problem with punishment is that while effective, no one denies that, it carries concerns with it, in the same way that if a parent was using a lot of corporal punishment, for example, with their children, they're likely to create side effects, and that child is likely to grow up, or more likely to grow up, aggressive themselves or become more
Mm.
aggressive, based on the data that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I know recently you talked about it and you had a conversation with someone. I can't remember his name, but I want to ask you now, based on what you learned and understood. So, why would people use punishment?
People use punishment because for a variety of reasons, but one of the most obvious reasons is that it is reinforcing to the punisher. So if I scream at my dog for barking, or if I give them an abrupt leash correction, I can get that dog to comply. They will listen. In fact, it is listed as the only benefit that I'm aware of anyway, to using punishment. You can get compliance by using punishment, but you can also get compliance by not using punishment, and and not have the associated risks there. Does that answer the question, or what was your full
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah. I think we can go a little bit deeper into this.
Yeah.
Personally, for example, when people ask me how about punishment and all that, and you can talk about this as well if you feel comfortable.
Sure.
Personally, for example, if somebody says why not punishment, I dig into the personality of that individual. I'm saying, did you enjoy punishment when you were a kid?
Mhm.
And why would you even consider punishment in your vocabulary in a way that you want to rely on punishment? Why do you even think about punishment, right, as a way of solving a problem? In any case, not that doesn't have to be dog training.
So I think people use punishment for a variety of reasons. We talked about one of them, in that it seems to work, right? Without they also, we have traced a lot of this to, honestly, colonialism, punishment culture, toxic masculinity. These are all traits that we see in a big segment of the dog training community promoting these outdated methods that are in direct contradiction with every behavior science body on earth. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but let's talk about people who don't want to use punishment, but when they look up a video or when they call someone up out of that they find on the internet, they're persuaded that this is in the best interest of the dog. And this is the particularly insidious part of this industry, is that otherwise well-intended people are being brainwashed, for lack of a better term, to think that this is the proper way to use pain and fear to communicate with dogs.
Yeah. So, you do a quick internet search, YouTube search, how to stop my dog from doing this and that. Boom, you're bombarded with tons of videos. And one of them, unfortunately, is your nemesis, in a way. It's my nemesis too. It's Dog Daddy. He's the one that we can point fingers and say, that's the technique that you don't want to use. So let's talk about Dog Daddy. So when people see Dog Daddy's videos and alike, they start mimicking those, and they start kind of copying and saying, this is what I'm supposed to do. So how can me and you and dog trainers, how can we stop this madness? What is wrong with this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Well, it requires us to, we've spent a lot of time thinking about this question. It requires us to unravel why we are here. I recently put out a video, people can see it on YouTube, on police dogs and the culture that, that creates in the dog training community, and that intersectionality. There's a lot of misinformation out there in the dog training field, but what can we do about it? Well, we've taken at least a two-pronged approach, if not more. We make videos on a regular basis showing people how to use modern methods to the best of our ability when training dogs. In fact, we're about to start a brand new series. You can get the exclusive on that.
Great. Nice.
So yes, I think it's important to show people how to teach dogs. It's also important to call out misinformation with those who are comfortable doing so, who have a platform. And it's, I don't buy into this argument that it's just about showing people how to train dogs. Just shut up and train, some people will say, right? And I don't agree with that. I think training is important, but when I hear people say things like shut up and train, I hear people trying to quell rational humans, rational people who want to bring up and change ideas. So it's not just enough to show the public how to train. We have to help them understand how we've come to this through many toxic systemic issues that intersect with our profession and taint it and hold it back.
And I think one of the other things that we can do is ask dog owners to be more responsible for their actions that they're taking and about their dog ownership and all that, and maybe even you know I've thought about it too. Government has to chip in a little bit and uh, getting to start from regulating dog breeders, dog daycares, dog trainers, all
Sure.
these businesses, including dog trainers online. They should be regulated. There should be a regulation that unfortunately doesn't exist, and that causes these dog owners to get even more confused because, again, because there's no regulation, they can go to hundreds of uh, points of view, hundreds of videos, hundreds of ways of training dogs, and that causes actually more and more confusion in a dog owner that is trying, maybe not even is not even thinking about using aversive tools and methods, and gets involved with that ideology just because this is what is available. And eventually what's going to happen is, I think we're going to have a lot of dogs who are suffering, a lot of dog owners who are confused, and they don't know exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're still searching for solutions. Yet um, we have these individuals that who come and use aversive tools and methods, and they just make it worse and worse. Whatever we're, let's say, positive trainers are trying to fix, they come and ruin it. What are the some of the common false impression people have about dog training?
Well, I mean, we can go with the greatest hits list, and some people think you need to be dominant over a dog, or some people think that you express leadership through force rather than through love. These are a lot of false misconceptions, or a lot of misconceptions rather, in our field. I think a lot of people underestimate the intelligence and capability of dogs to be much more complex emotionally as well. So in both intelligence and emotional intelligence, dogs are extremely sophisticated animals, and more than the public might understand in general.
I mean, dog training, in my opinion, is the simplest thing you can do. You can train a dog. It's very simple. Training the dog owner is the hardest part, in my opinion.
That's right. That's right. Everyone has their own worldview. Everyone has their own ways of going about things. We have the history of our past. We talk a lot on my channel about conservatism bias when we're talking about this issue, which is essentially giving as much or more credibility to an older and worse idea than to a newer and better idea as well. And so that all of that gets in the way. Nonetheless, it is our responsibility as those who take agency in this craft and educate the public on the topic. It's our responsibility to help clear that up. I would much rather be in an occupation that did not have this type of incompetence in it and just focus on teaching the public how to train dogs. But there's a majority of incompetence in the field, unfortunately. And that's one of the things we aim to whistleblow about when we're talking about this.
Yeah, one of the things that I want to share with dog owners as well is that, for example, myself, I respect traditions, I respect, history and all that. But the other part that I also understand is that we learn lessons from history, from traditions. And one of the things that we can learn is, yes, in the past, dog owners, maybe they used aversive methods or even tools, domination and all that to train dogs. But we have evolved and we have learned new lessons, new ideas, which we're going to talk about those as well. But we have evolved, and we can use new ideas to train dogs. And as I said, dog training is not complicated. It's very simple. I mean, myself, for example, about 25, 30 years ago, when I got my own first dog, I had a challenge, and I feel what dog owners they go through. They go through this challenge of having a puppy or a new dog, and they're saying, "Oh my God, what am I supposed to do?" I was there. I was making a lot of mistakes, and I was trying to learn, and I was having a challenge training him, and I figured out, okay, if I just spend time with my puppy, I took 2 weeks off, for example, of my work just to spend time with my puppy, and I just played with him, and I started training him. He started learning things. And that was the light bulb moment for me. And the other light bulb moment was when I was watching your show. Do you remember the name of the show? What was it?
Oh gosh, the show, my first TV show. Let me think.
Yeah.
What was the name of that thing? Super Fetch. That was the name of it.
Perfect. Yes, yes.
You know what?
That's
Listen,
the one.
Saro, look, you're one of about 18 people who saw the show, so I'm glad you saw it, and it made a positive impression on you.
Well, I was watching the show and I was saying, if Zach can teach the dog to go get a beer from the cooler, I can teach anything to my dog. So I started implementing play in my training, and I was able to do everything that I needed to do with my beagle. And beagles, they are prone to they have their own mind, and they have their nose on the ground, and they don't listen to anybody, anything. That was the kind of ideology of a beagle. But I could take my beagles everywhere off leash. They would listen without being, hard-handed or any domination or anything like that. Mind you, in those times, there was this idea of domination going around, and I was kind of buying it too. I was thinking, oh, Cesar Millan came, and he started promoting this ideology as well, and I was like, oh wow, that's the way it is. Then I figured out, okay, that's not the way. He's using traditional, outdated methods, and I changed my point of view again. So I've gone through that journey of
Nice.
learning, changing, and figuring out what to do and how to do it. And I have figured out that dog training is the most easiest, simplest thing that you can do. I mean, as a business, as a dog trainer,
Mhm.
you can easy job. You can train a dog, boom. But I think is that the problem that is complicating things, and this is why we have these conversations, because we're trying to change humans' outlook.
Yes, I would say that's true. Trying to help them understand where the updates have happened in the field, where there are new ways of looking at things. So for sure.
What is one of the biggest challenges that you faced in your career as a dog trainer, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, wow, that is a. Oh, you mean like in terms of dogs that I've worked with?
Yeah, yeah.
Honestly, I can't. People ask me, and I've worked with dogs with all kinds of issues. Issues dealing with anxiety and things like that there are no quick fixes to stuff like that. And so I don't know that those are particularly difficult, or that they are, it's just a matter of being patient and setting up the environment for the dog in order to help them make gains if possible on that particular issue. So, we deal with a fair amount of that when we've worked with dogs. And
did you have a case that you said, you know what, this is the toughest case, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, how the hell do I fix this, how do I get this done, and then you did it? Was there a case that stressed you out?
Yeah, no, I have been at a standstill before, but one of the things that a dog trainer is supposed to do when they're at a standstill are to consult with people who may have knowledge on that particular issue. And so when I do get stumped, I talk to others who have expertise in the field. I do research on it. And so far, I can't think of a case where I was like, no, I can't help you here. There have been cases where I'm not available to help you because my schedule doesn't permit or something like that. But yeah, no, it's all pretty simple when you can. I don't want to oversimplify complex issues, especially relating to behavior, but by modifying a dog's environment and making a genuine effort to address anxiety in ways that addresses underlying problems or fear or whatever the issue is, that's that's something that is achievable for pretty much everyone if they have a little bit of guidance, I think.
What would you suggest to dog owners? What would be your tips when they come across a behavioral challenge with their dogs?
Well, maybe to consult with an expert if they feel unsure on how to address it. Short of that, I mean, something that I've told people for years is use the part of your brain that you use when you're communicating with a young child. Because you're dealing with a very intelligent mammal with many similarities to other mammals when you're interacting with a dog. So that might be a way to help people break through and not think that they're communicating with some computer. My wife is over here. I think she has something she's thinking. What do you want to say? Yeah. So understanding what Bree is talking about is understanding the function of a particular undesired behavior. How is that benefiting the dog? What benefit are they receiving for it in their mind? Sometimes that's straightforward and sometimes it may not be so straightforward. But if they can identify, well, why is my dog doing this? Why are they barking? They can analyze, well, did I give them exercise this morning? I have say they have a high energy dog. Have they addressed that underlying issue of that pent up energy? And often when they do that, they realize, oh, I don't have a computer here. I have a living, breathing, thinking being that's very similar to me in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And are there any tips that you can share on that people are dealing dog owners who are having challenges with their dogs on daily basis?
I like exercise as a general rule. That's obviously not all dogs are going to be high energy and need lots of exercise. Some need more than others to feel content. Mental and physical stimulation, make sure we're engaging their brain, make sure we have things in their environment that are interesting to them, appropriate things to chew on if they're a dog that likes to chew. Really optimizing the dog's environment for that individual dog to bring peace to them can often help. And exercise is the closest thing to a magic bullet I have, but that's certainly not going to be true with everyone, but that's a general guideline, I think, for what I found to be true. How about you? Have you found that to be true, exercise?
Yeah, definitely. I focus on providing a dog's daily 5 essential needs, I call it. I wrote a book about it too, which are exercise, training, socialization, care, and affection, to provide those 5 things on daily basis. If you are able to hit those goals on daily basis, you won't have to be dealing with any behavioral issue with the dog. So yeah. All right. So are there any new trends or innovation in dog training that you find exciting or promising?
Yeah, I like the current theme that is emerging over the last few years and I know we talked about this a bit earlier, in identifying how training methods affect the dog's emotional state. Too often, both the public and too many professionals alike disregard the emotional state, what the dog is feeling during the training process. So they might offer a harsh correction, but hey, the dog stopped pulling, so success. No, that's not success, because now we have created other issues, most likely. We're conditioning the dog that leash pop now is essentially punishing other things that they're thinking about. Kids playing on a playground nearby. It's not just about the leash pulling. Those associations go farther than just the behavior they are focused on as the person. So I like this new trend of prioritizing the dog's emotional state. I shouldn't say a new trend, but it is becoming more prevalent in the dog training community that this is even more important, or at least as important, right? To maintain the welfare. It's more important. But the training is also very important.
Yes.
But kind of like what you're talking about, you take care of the welfare of the dog, you have much fewer issues.
Right. Yes. And can you dig in a little bit deeper in the part that you were saying? So let's say, pulling on the, yanking on the leash, or zapping with the, shock collar, or yelling at the dog, or doing anything like that to a dog, aversive method or tool is used, yes, the unwanted behavior at that momentarily stops. Can you dig in a little bit deeper? What happens deeper level to the dog?
Yeah. So, and again, there are people who are much more qualified to tell you what's happening in the brain there.
Right.
But
Yeah.
what we think we know, or my understanding is, let me just say it that way,
Yeah.
are that we have what the layman might think of as negative brain chemicals happening, stress hormones, because they do studies on this. They take the blood of a dog after being trained a certain way, and they look at the hormones in that blood, and they can tell what's in there. And often we see stress when we're using punitive methods like that. And while just like a, person can be arrested by a police officer and be under control, doesn't mean the person is thriving. And we shouldn't think of our dogs as criminals to be punished either. I think that's also an important way of looking at it as well. But yeah, that's what I mean. There's a lot of negative things going on in the dog's brain when you're using punitive methods, if they perceive it as aversive. Remember, the dog determines both what's reinforcing and the dog determines what's aversive to them or unpleasant. So what might be aversive to one dog might not be to another.
Right. And do you know the long-term effects of it?
Yeah, it would seem that the data suggests that there are long-term negative fallout, such as increased fear and anxiety, mistrust between a guardian and their dog, and increased aggression, to name a few. We talked a moment ago about how if we issue a leash correction near a playground where children are playing, even though you're not intending to correct your dog for being curious about those children or anything, you're creating an association in that dog's mind that, oh, when kids are nearby, I might get that. I'm fearful that I might receive that correction. And fearful dogs are more likely to act out in undesirable ways in other areas. Suppression is not training.
Yes, that's great. And let's turn the page over and look at it from the other side of what benefits the dog for learning or giving you the behavior that it's wanted, that you want. What does it help?
Well, in addition to prioritizing the dog's welfare and making sure they have things in their environment and all of that, what gets reinforced is what gets repeated. When we provide positive outcomes, consequences of a behavior, and when we take time to set up the environment in such a way that we're likely to get success to help that dog build on their skills in more challenging environments. Yeah, that's
and what would be the ideal motivators?
Well, I think that's a great question. So I was talking to Dr. Eduardo Fernandez recently. I think you referenced him earlier. He's a welfare scientist, and we were talking about how animal behavior experts, when they go in to do an assessment, will do a preference assessment, and they will try to see what is reinforcing for this particular dog. Because like you mentioned with your beagle, they weren't food motivated, right? And that's true. A lot of dogs aren't as motivated by food. Many are. But things like tug of war, fetch, things like that, I think can be really common reinforcers. Elements in the environment. I mean, these are the three big things I look to when I think of reinforcers: play, food, environment, access to a particular environment.
And you mean environment could be the dog owners themselves, right? As well.
I mean, that would be a change in their environment. Yeah, whatever that dog finds reinforcing is really, and it could be that, or it couldn't be that. Maybe because I've known, as a trainer, some dogs, they are not as motivated to interact with me, but they might be motivated to hear what I have to say. If I've got a small piece of chicken, to bridge the gap and make friends with them.
Okay, and just so I understand you, and you people understand you. I referred your first show, TV show. I noticed that you were more play focused, and through time you started using more and more food, let's say. What changed there? What did anything change, or what changed, or what was the
I don't think anything
transition? Or
changed.
no, no.
No, I don't think anything changed. I look, if I have a heavily play motivated dog, absolutely I am gonna really try to capitalize on that
Hmm.
for sure. A dog, especially an intense, high drive, energetic, playful dog who will play tug of war. For that stereotypical dog, I don't use treats hardly ever. I don't really need to,
Hmm.
unless maybe I'm trying to get them to chill a little bit. And I'm like, all right, maybe we can lure. This will make you a little bit less intense because you're so into
Hmm.
the ball or something. But
Hmm. Hmm.
in
Hmm.
general, I do use toys for those dogs. So I don't think much changed. I've worked with a lot of low key dogs who could not care less about playing. Maybe they
Hmm.
have a way of socializing
Right.
more or expressing some playful behavior. But on at least if we're talking about a positive reinforcement contingency, I have to make sure that I have something that's reinforcing to them, and I can't force a dog to like playing. Though I
Hmm.
can try. I can
Right.
I can bring about play in many dogs that maybe initially didn't show an interest. But yeah, so that would be, I got to look at what's reinforcing to that dog, what makes them happy, what gets those positive brain chemicals going. And I think treats have been shown in many respects to get the dog in a good mood, to have those positive brain chemicals. And I think probably you can tell me how you think of this. I think
Yeah.
part of your objection to treats in the training process has to do maybe with it being too transactional or too sterile or not enough emphasis on the person and building that bond. Is that what bothers you about using treats in training sometimes?
Those and few more, yes.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on those then?
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. Like just paying your dog a treat every time they do something and standing there like a robot. Although, I mean, depending on what you're teaching, sometimes that might be advantageous, but
Right.
sometimes it might just be more cold and sterile, and there's a lack of engagement between the person and the dog. And I'm the type of trainer who wants to see people really connect with their dogs and play and love each other, and play is such an amazing way to build a bond. So you will get no pushback from me on using play during the training process. But yeah, it's for the dogs that are less play driven that I
Hmm.
still want to bring about new behavior with.
Right. Uh, like for example, you mentioned if I see the dog. In my cases, when I approach an individual dog that, let's say, doesn't seem like in the first place being play motivated, I refer to praise. Praise is like, oh, such a good girl, such a good boy. Oh, what a boy. Oh, wow. Praising and just getting the dog, sharing that energy of um, gratitude with the dog, that, wow, you're such an amazing being, right? That sharing the praise for me is my second tool, I would say. Uh, yeah.
A
So
secondary reinforcer.
yes, yes. So
Mhm.
like, I say, okay, if it's not, the dog is not responding to, let's say, play, which in my opinion, um, if a dog is not playful, there is something deeper going on. Any dog, any research has shown that all animals love to play, even dragons. Those dragons in, you know, uh, even worms, they like to play. The play is something that is embedded in every individual. It's part of life. When we are babies, the first one of the first thing that we do, we start playing with toys, and mom, dad, grabbing their fingers and things like that. We play, and puppies, also the first thing they do is play. They play bite, they play fight, play chase each other and all that. So play is a form of not only practicing life lessons, but it's a reward for the dog. If an individual plays with me, I get happy. I get all those chemicals, positive chemicals, running in my brain. So if I see a dog is not playful, I'm saying, okay, there's something deeper going on here. We have to reignite the playfulness in this dog. Something has happened that this dog has lost the passion of play, the happiness of the joy of the play. And I think when I see a dog like that, my second tool is praise. And I think when I start using praise to praise the dog, that gets the dog energetic, energizes the dog, and that gets that, okay, I can go and grab the toy and play maybe, because then I'm starting to use both play and praise. And honestly, I've never met a dog who has refused any of those two. And I've never had the need of using treats to get to that level. And we talk about tools. A pen can be a tool, can be a weapon, right? You can, talk about that. But what it is, treats could be useful, but the thing is, what happens is, again, dog trainers, when they encourage dog owners to use treats, for example, it makes the dog owner to depend heavily to the treats, that they don't learn the concept behind it, the reason why you're using treats. You know what I mean?
Sure, I think that can be true with some people. I think
Yeah.
everyone's a little bit different there.
Yeah.
But being able to surround behaviors that you want to see repeated, or being able to provide a desirable consequence after something. For example, I'll give you an example of how I use treats almost every day in my own house. You'll see right here, I've got some dog treats.
Yeah.
If my dog is in the other room and I call them, I love to be in the position to just give them a treat after, to say thank you. I appreciate that, because now I know, because the math predicts this. This is very much an established science that that they're more likely to repeat the behavior. So I try to not miss an opportunity to reinforce something like a recall in particular. It also helps me with positive interrupters as well. So if my dog is barking and I call them, because they now have that association, something great happens when I come, then
Right.
that is a likelihood to increase that behavior in the future. Now, I don't think my relationship should be based on that. I don't think it's just all about, okay, in order to do this, or I have to give you a treat every time you do something. So that's why we often talk about weaning dogs off of treats, or at least to a degree. Everything needs to be reinforced pretty consistently,
Right.
in order to prevent drift from happening. But yeah, if it makes my dog feel good, and it increases the odds that they're likely to repeat the behavior in the future, I think that's good. With regard to what you said about some dogs not being playful, and you think there might be some underlying issue, I think that's valid to consider. I mean, we always want to consider if there's something affecting a dog's mood. But I'll push back a little bit in that anecdotally speaking, I feel like I've met many dogs who could not care less about playing, whom would be receptive to being pets. But as you said, being praised, to me as a dog trainer, I look at it as a secondary reinforcer. In other words, I don't know that it is motivating enough to many dogs. Like, I don't think that I could have easily trained a dog to fetch a beer from a fridge without, I don't feel like I could easily do that without applying a lot of these approaches.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I love this conversation, and I find, for example, if my dog, I'm sitting the same scenario. I'm sitting at home, and I call my dog to come. When I praise my dog, I'm saying "good girl" or "good boy" for coming. Right. That, in my opinion, and research has kind of shown that that's kind of the idea. They appreciate more praise than the sausage or the food. I don't know if you have studied Dr. Gregory Burns. Dr. Gregory Burns. He did this research. I don't know if you come across this research, that he trained dogs to go under the scan, the
MRI.
MRI scan, and he offered treats and he offered the dogs. First of all, he trained the dogs with treats to be comfortable around the MRI scan because it's loud and all that. But then he started doing this experiment that he asked the dog to, to stay still, and they offered sausage and measured the levels, and they offered the dog owner saying good boy, good girl, and they measured the levels, and showed that dogs preferred the human saying good boy, good girl more than the sausage. And it wasn't about the sausage. Those dogs who replied to sausage, it wasn't to the sausage, it was to the hand that was giving the sausage.
Mm-hmm. So wait, was there sausage or not?
So some group were given sausage,
Oh, okay.
right? And some group were given just a praise.
I see. Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly open-minded to looking at any new research that sheds light on that. And I don't doubt that, I don't doubt that praise has benefit. I'm certainly not saying don't praise your dog.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and I don't think you're saying that either, or that I'm saying that. But yeah, I mean, I'm open-minded to look at that. I still, I remain unconvinced that using something to motivate a dog, some really a good piece of food that they enjoy, that's special. I'm not a fan of withholding meals or anything like that, of course. But in the same way that if my wife asks me to take out the trash and I say I'll do it in a little bit, but if she offers me a Reese's peanut butter cup, I'm going to get that done much quicker. So I was going to say, I really feel like the heart of what you're saying is we need to make sure the bond between the person and the dog is really prioritized. This is what dogs and people really do best together. Dogs were bred to not only work for us, but we bred the dogs that were good at coexisting with us and so forth.
That's right.
So
yeah.
I feel like that's the heart of what you're getting at. In that is that right? Or
yeah, I say usually, dogs have been bred and designed by humans for humans.
Mm-hmm.
And we won't be designing bad individuals. We will be breeding and designing good dogs, good individuals, so that they can work closely with us, live closely with us. And if we have that already embedded in their system, all you have to do is just water the plant. You know what I mean? The other reason that I kind of emphasize on play and praise is I'm looking into the future. I'm looking into the future of dog training, and I'm hoping that one day we will get to that point that we will say, you know what, we're going to put all these gadgets and tools and ideologies aside and just simplify dog training to being with a dog. And being with a dog is playing with the dog, praising the dog, natural form that you don't need any gadgets, anything. You don't have to so-called bribe the dog. You don't have to phase out the treats. You don't have to go through all these steps. Simply play and praise the dog. And that's something that you would do anyways in daily basis, and if you're not doing it, you're not praising your dog, you're not playing with your dog, then something has to change. And the reason I'm doing this is, one, simplify dog training, is hopefully looking at the future that this could be the ideal way of training dogs.
Yeah. I mean, I think every case is, I hear you on that. And I think every case is unique, and we want to keep on the table all types of ways to reinforce things or motivate our dogs or keep them happy. And if your primary goal is increasing the welfare of dogs and their people, that's a noble goal to have. And I think that's great.
How do you stay updated with the latest research and development in dog behavior and training?
That's a great question. I need to give credit to my wife and partner, my partner and wife, I should say, in this context. She is very scientifically literate and has exceptional research abilities. So she is the one who primarily unearths the latest and greatest information for our business. Though I do too. There are a variety of ways. I mean, on social media, people will publicize, new findings oftentimes, and and we'll do regular searches to see what new studies have come out in the past, 30 days or whatever, to see if there's anything interesting. Listening to people who have established credibility, people who have established that they don't disregard scientific consensus on the issue of ethics in our field. So there's a variety of ways to keep up with latest developments.
Right. What advice would you give to new dog owners who are just starting their dog training journey?
Be patient. Be prepared to give the dog the time they deserve. Be overwhelmingly consistent. Make sure you have lots of love. Make sure you're prioritizing your relationship with the dog before anything else, and the rest will likely take care of itself. To a degree.
Yes. How can dog owners work with professional trainers to achieve the best results?
Well, you want to make sure that if you're working with a trainer, and you mentioned this earlier, like even to the well-intended pet guardian out there who is trying to do best by their dog, but they don't know where to start, like, I feel for them, because even when they're trying to do their research, they're going to come across a lot of so-called convincing information that is not in their best interest. Do you know what I mean? And so if they're working with a professional, you want to make sure that you're working with a professional who is well-versed in modern ethics, which involve the omission of harsh aversive methods. So that should be a red flag to them. I'm trying to get to your question, but I had to have that caveat there.
Yeah, yes, sure.
I understand that if you're working with a dog trainer who is good, that the work is still on you. You are the person who needs to do the work. The trainer is there to do the know-how and basics in behavior and operant conditioning and so forth. And so you need to make sure that you're putting in that 20 minutes a day or an hour a day, and make sure you're providing the welfare components we talked about earlier. That would be my advice if you're working with a dog training professional.
And what would be the red flags again?
Oh, red flags are very often the triage of tools that are recommended. Choke chains, prong collars, and shock collars are often a major red flag. Usually, I will say, a red flag. If you hear a trainer talking about using terms like dominance, Cesar Millan popularized this for people to think. This has been extensively scientifically debunked. Anyone who has this emphasis on authority, anyone who has this emphasis on being the boss or alpha, those are major red flags. Does that mean everything they're saying is wrong? Not necessarily, but they are red flags that shows you there is a minimum level of due diligence that has not been met by that individual.
How about balanced dog training?
Yeah, balanced dog training is a term that is used to describe someone who says they use positive reinforcement and aversive techniques. I choose to refer to these trainers as either aversive trainers or red flag trainers. The reason I do this is based on the fact that this is what the consensus is in our field. It's a problematic phrase because it seems to indicate that if you're in the middle, then you're fine. But there's nothing centrist about using pain and fear sometimes. That's like, I only hit kids sometimes at this daycare. I only do it when they really need it as a last resort. It never addresses underlying causes, right? So that's why we don't use it as professionals. It's a distraction from the real issue.
So in a way, I would say most of dog trainers that are popular beside you on YouTube, I've kind of noticed that they are balanced dog trainers.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. Yeah, we are one of the few positive reinforcement trainers out there, and I know you're up there too. You've got a decent audience,
right?
That is, I'm surrounded in the rankings on YouTube by aversive dog trainers. In the top 5, I think we're the only positive reinforcement dog training channel. And yeah, we're heavily outnumbered by public opinion. And this is one of those clear-cut cases where public opinion has not been informed by the science just yet. And so We're waiting for them to catch up, and we're trying to accelerate that process through our advocacy, through raising awareness, and through showing people how to connect with and teach their dogs.
Right. It's interesting. The other day, I was talking to a YouTuber, and they were having a live session, and I was talking to them about YouTube and all that. And one of the interesting things that they brought up was that search volume will determine what shows up, and it's basically faults of Google that rankings are especially with YouTube nowadays, they're ranking based on views.
Among other things. I mean, my understanding is the algorithm prioritizes not only views, but watch time,
Right. Yeah.
click-through ratio, things like that.
Yeah, watch time and all that. So those, when people are watching, let's say, Dog Daddy's videos, it brings the watch time up, and it brings it brings that video on top. Unfortunately, even though is the worst video from our terms, right? Unfortunately, we're dealing with that too. We're dealing with search results. We're dealing with technology that is not having. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have understanding of concept of what is humane and what is not. Unfortunately, right?
Or it does, and it doesn't care. I mean, there is that too. Maybe the algorithm does understand it's problematic, especially with all the advancements in AI. I find it pretty difficult to believe that it doesn't know that it's problematic. But yeah, it is. It is a very serious problem in the dog training field. It is the most serious problem in the dog training field, to my knowledge, in that somewhere between 50 and 70%, it would seem, this is my impression, of dog trainers are using outdated methods because there's no regulation in this field.
Right.
You should have to have a license to become a dog trainer.
Yeah, I agree. Heavily agree. I mean, I know, many years ago when I started dog training, I was happy that, I could be a dog trainer and I have no boundaries. I have no limits. I have the freedom to do whatever I want. I could have taught humans, dog owners, smack the hell out of your dogs and they would do it and they will learn that. And I had the freedom and the opportunity to do that. And the simplicity of the business itself, it is it has a pros and cons into it, that there are people also who really love dogs and they want to help dog owners. I mean, I'll be honest with you, all dog trainers, even Dog Daddy, he wants to help. He loves dogs. He wants to help people. I'm sure. I mean, you have to be an evil person to consider aversive methods and tools to be ideal way of training dogs. But I think what is happening is, I was there too. I was starstruck with Cesar Millan, let's say. And that's what Dog Daddy does. That's what all these dog trainers do. They feel that's it. That's all it is. Quick results. I'm getting famous. I'm getting the words out and all that. He's a young kid, is enjoying this popularity, enjoys this fame and all that. I was there. People made T-shirts. I used to live in North Vancouver, British Columbia. My clients made T-shirt, North Shore's Dog Whisperer. And I was like, wow, look at this. This is amazing. And I was there, and it gave me that boost and, feel good energy, right? And that's what happened, that one day I realized, no, that's not the system and method that I want to follow and continue. Yeah, I changed 180, but the thing is, many of them are still believing in those stuff, and they're in that state of mind. And unfortunately, again, we can't really do anything to undo this, but what we can do, we can talk about it, at least do this have these conversations to get to reach out to people and hopefully change their mind and point of view. what are the most common mistakes that you see dog owners make, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, that's a common one. Too much freedom too early with a new dog. And so by freedom, I mean, it's important that we set their environment up for them to succeed, that we're not, letting them hang out on our couch if they're going to tear it up. I'm okay with dogs being on the furniture, to be clear.
Yeah.
Um, there she is.
Oh, such a beautiful.
But yeah, setting up the environment is really important. And so too much freedom too early. That's one that comes to mind. I recently asked my audience. There's so many things: underestimating the intelligence of the dog, not understanding their physical and mental needs, things like that. But I'll go with too much freedom too early is my classic here.
Any other top 3 mistakes?
Top 3. Well, okay, I think I gave them there. So we said too much freedom too early. 1, not enough exercise. Expecting too much of your dog. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe potty training. A lot of people get hung up on that. They get a successful day or 2 in a row and they think they've declared victory and let their guard down, and then it gets worse than ever. So, things like that, I think, where people get a little too celebrated, not understanding that it takes 2 years, in my opinion, to have a highly trained dog in a variety of environments. I think people expect, since their dog sits in the living room, they should be able to sit downtown where it's really distracting. And so, yeah.
Yes, that's very key point. 2 years you have to invest.
I can get a dog doing all the basics in one training session. In fact, I have videos with a puppy. We get a dog to sit down, stay, come, get versions of all of that in 20 minutes. But does that mean the dog knows them in every environment? No, that's the real training that you have to do.
Yes. It's like, you don't consider yourself that you raised a kid until they're out of the house.
Right.
That takes 18 years or so.
Yeah.
So what are your future goals or projects that are related to dog training and educating dog owners?
Well, we're really focused on continuing to educate the public about modern dog training methods and showing them with vivid examples. And I have literally hundreds of different dogs on my YouTube channel. I know you have a lot of dogs as well that you feature. And so that we intend to continue that. We continue to pursue advocacy work centered around bringing about common sense regulation in our field so that the public is protected. This isn't about controlling other dog trainers. This is about protecting the public and making sure that their interest is best represented with the modern evidence-backed approaches that we all have access to. So those are the current things. Maybe I'll do another TV show one day. Who knows? Maybe I'll start a dog training school. Maybe I'll just quit dog training at some point. I have no idea. I mean, really, who knows what the future is going to be?
What are the things that are going in your mind that you think that it's possibility actually?
In what regard?
Like dog training, actually opening a school or?
No, I am not so much. I mean, I never say never to anything, but I do value. I value maybe an online school or something. I shy away from bricks and mortar businesses personally, just because I do so much traveling and stuff. But yeah, having influence and echoing what the scientific community is teaching us about these remarkable animals and how they learn, that is a passion of mine and a privilege to be able to amplify those messages to the public. So yeah, my publisher's been on me to write a 3rd book, but I don't enjoy book writing, if I'm being honest. So I don't know if I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah.
But we're going to be making some changes on social media moving forward as well that I think some people will find interesting, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah,
and you mentioned a new series you're going to start.
Yeah, we've got a new German Shepherd Malinois mix that's going to be moving in with us for a few weeks, and we're going to document the training process and how that goes, and
all right,
see if we can learn some new things.
Can I ask you, like, how is your process of making videos and production? How does that work? How do you do it?
Well, I mean, just like a traditional production, you have to have pre-production, production, and post-production. I mean,
Right.
it's, a lot of planning, making sure that you are writing your material to fit with that dog, make sure that you're extracting those lessons that are of interest to the most possible people. Because you can go into a dog, because you'll identify with this
Yeah.
as a dog trainer. You can go into a dog training appointment with your general game plan, but sometimes you
Right.
have to adjust that plan a little bit based on what's motivating the dog, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you need to make it a little bit easier and split criteria or something like that.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So do you use people to help you with the production? Do you have a crew and things, or is it just you and Bree?
So we've done that in the past. We've gotten pretty darn efficient at shooting a series these days. So yeah, for me, the secret is using your iPhone as your camera.
Mm.
So
Mm.
we use our iPhones as dedicated cameras now because you always have one with you. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can capture those small moments that people really relate with rather than being like, well, I wonder what the dog's going to do right now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, right.
but no, Bree and I work together as a two-person team. Occasionally, we will contract out video editing if
Mm.
we're overwhelmed.
Yeah. So most of the videos you're editing, or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, these
yeah,
days, I really enjoy the editing process. I
yeah,
really do
yeah.
enjoy telling the story, and really.
Mm. Yeah, me too. I find making videos as another passion of mine, like filmmaking in a way.
Yeah,
Uh, I work on that in editing. Yes, is the fun part, putting the story together and making sure that it tells a story, but also teaches something as well. And yeah, enjoy that part too. As a content creator, do you enjoy creating content in general?
oh, it's great. Yeah, I don't think you could do this job if you didn't love what you did.
Mm.
Uh, it really you have to really enjoy it, especially like right now. It's a very turbulent time in the dog training industry. There's a lot of vitriol going on about trying to modernize the industry behind the
Mm.
scenes and everything. And so you have to really be passionate and enjoy what you do to
Right.
keep producing. And I do. And
Yeah.
so, like I said, I consider it an honor to even be in the position to echo the scientific community.
Great. And I wanted to kind of ask, what is a day in the life of Zach George?
Oh, it depends. I mean, we move around a lot. We do a lot of camping, a lot of RVing. I work on the
Oh,
road a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. And so it depends on what's going on. But a typical day is getting up, seeing if any news broke overnight that I need to be aware of in my field, making sure that we address anything there. If misinformation is being put out, people will often make me aware of it. So I try to keep my eye on those things. That's usually how I'll start off the day, and
Mm.
making sure that we're a counterweight to any bad information being spread out there in the community.
Mm.
Right now we're focused on this next series, so we're getting scripts generally written to the best that we can. And I try to ideally work out 5 days a week. I'm not always successful with that. And
At home or at gym?
at home, I have a home gym here.
Yeah.
Or if I'm on the road, a long walk. I love walking.
Mm.
So yeah.
What are your favorite activities?
Favorite activities? Well, I like dog training. I like editing the videos like we were just discussing. I love experiencing life. I'm a fan of the sciences in general. One of my most recent fascinations is in the field of geology.
Right.
Interested
Yeah.
in the study of the earth and how it is composed. To me, it's really interesting. I've always been into like cosmology and astronomy and things like that, and just understanding how the universe works. And the reason I like geology so much is because we get to live on a rocky planet. We actually have access to a real live planet we can explore here and understand. Even though it's our own planet, it's still a real planet in space, and that blows me away.
Yeah, it's beautiful too.
Yeah, it's also pretty. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
What is your favorite drink?
Favorite drink? Well, I drink a lot of these sparkling waters, no particular brand. They're all the same to me. I usually just get the cheapest one. But yeah, sparkling water, maybe sweet tea, unfortunately. I'm trying to cut back on the sugar.
Yeah. What is your favorite food?
Oh, goodness. Well, favorite food. I eat a lot of salads. I think salads are probably my favorite thing to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. My wife just said for favorite food,
Uh,
it's actually a peppermint patty. I
oh,
like chocolate. Yeah, I'm gonna change. You're right. Chocolate's my favorite.
chocolate.
Okay.
So, favorite color?
I guess blue because I have
Blue.
blue eyes. So people tell me
Uh-huh.
when I wear blue, it brings out my blue eyes. So
Nice.
I'm kind
Yeah,
of biased to the
that's
blue
my
color.
favorite color too. Yeah. All right. Anything else we should know about Zach, and anything Zach should tell people?
Sure, I want people to know if they ever follow me on social media, things can get contentious at times, but I want people to know that I'm deeply committed to bringing them the best evidence-backed dog training that I possibly know how to do, and that we always have an open mind to newer and better information emerging, and that we take our recommendations that we give to the public extremely seriously, and we try to make sure our ideas are supported before telling people how to train their dogs. So we take agency in this profession.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much for doing this, Zach. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about Zach as well, and your mission and your goals. And I think that's the part that many dog owners and dog trainers also they don't see, they don't know. And I hope by doing this we can close the gap a little bit more, and learn a little bit more to be more tolerant and more focused on dogs and loving dogs and our mission, which is changing dogs' world, just like your dog training revolution. And hopefully, we'll get to a point that we don't have to talk about this and that about dog training and just enjoy our dogs, right?
Well, that's always the name of the game. That is the most important thing.
Yes. Thank you.